reassuring.
USC.
Everybody here's been vaccinated anyway.
USC and LA County Public Health come out with a study. They found that there are 7,000 cases in California, but they really believe that there are anywhere from 221,000 to 442,000 people who were infected.
Really?
Yeah.
So that makes it 0.1 to 0.3. There's a study to come out with, or?
Yeah, just give it to them. So it suggests that the case fatality risk of 10.
Wow.
Which puts you right in line with the flu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is.
So it was a hoax.
I don't think it was a hoax.
All right, folks.
Now, I know that was a little hard to hear, but few interesting things there. You know, they were talking about infection rates. One guy, John Roberts with CNN, wasn't wearing a mask. He walks by. Another guy is. They're going back and forth. I don't think it was John Roberts. John Roberts. I don't think it was John Roberts. I think it was the other guy said, we're all vaccinated anyways.
Right. From
for what?
Right.
And then they're basically agreeing, you know, even the official statistics, it's a hoax.
And it's like,
a hoax.
Or maybe it wasn't a hoax as much as like a drill that went live in the same way.
Beta test.
Yeah.
Like we talked about.
A beta test, exactly.
Beta test. Yeah, and that's another thing is, no, it's not going to go back to normal because...
Look at what they've been able to do.
The precedent that's been set, everybody now is accepting of just... Okay, they're holding us underwater like a beach ball, right?
Right.
And the longer that they hold us, the more desperate we'll be to gain some semblance of normalcy. It's the Overton window. They're going to move it so far next time. I mean, that's what... I mean, a lot of organic conversations have come about. Mm-hmm. You know, people are scratching their head, like you said, a paper tiger in the last few discussions. Mm-hmm. Wait a minute. If it really isn't as bad as they said it was going to be, are we going to do this again for flu? What happens in the fall?
Right.
You know, in the wintertime when people start getting sick again, you know, just naturally, you know, because that's what happens every year. I mean, you orthogonal, you have a, you know, sort of winter depression.
I think a lot of people do. You know, there's this interesting thing we call daylight saving time, where
and some people die.
Yeah, where you know we don't get enough vitamin D. I typically take a vitamin D supplement. A lot of people do. I used to point and laugh at people that got those sunshine lamps, but you know it's the real deal, and you know I'm able to tough it out a little better now, but usually by February, you know, I just kind of give in to the cold, dark, long days.
Right. And lo and behold, that's right when everything starts to sort of typically turn up, and the spring is coming into effect, and that was right when all this stuff got hammered down. And sure enough, they're going to probably do it again right around the holidays, which is like the first part of winter, and that's there again for like intimacy and merriment and joviality and gift giving.
Right.
They're gonna roll it out all over again right around there, and so they're gonna blanket over not only Easter but also the sort of Christmas.
It's the war on Christmas all over again.
Absolutely.
And the war on Christmas never ended.
And it's never ended. Yeah.
How about the hypocrisy of the University of North Carolina taking money, military money, to do experiments on Cerveza virus with samples garnered in China through funding that was provided to the Wuhan Virology Lab, and then implementing some of the more draconian restrictions, not really, you know, taking any sort of responsibility for their reckless biowarfare development.
Well, I mean, you could kind of see it as a sort of collusion between these two different so-called superpowers to consolidate more sway over their respective populations by following a kind of pattern of circumstance that could bring about more and more overreaching power.
Mm-hmm.
And so China's clearly interested in that, and
Right.
they've been, the globalist combine for a long time. They're certainly not the only, or perhaps even the main threat against the United States. However, they are a significant bloc, and they have been running massive population experiments for decades and decades as to how to create a huge mass of people that are more or less under the thumb of authoritarian decree. And it was, thought, well before Clinton that, China could never get to the point where it ever had a sort of consent of the governed, and that it would never be compatible in the United States. But increasingly, the type of people who run the United States government resemble more and more people who have the pattern of interests like the Chinese government. They do want to see more and more, control over the population. They do want to run assessments as to how they can gather more information and be more intrusive. And I in that sense, I think they're kind of working together, and it's almost like this weird, like, sibling rivalry or something, where the leadership in both countries have become so corrupt and so compromised that they're like competing as to like who can deceive their population more, who can
Right.
Implement the most draconian measures and in what unique ways.
Yeah.
And that's why a lot of this has seemed to me the whole time, where it's like all these different countries are competing for like the next level in intrusiveness, and the ones that seem to have a successful new introduction of the state in people's lives, those numbers are not as high, right? So you look at Korea, roadside testing in biosuits. I mean, imagine if that was rolled out all of the United States.
Right.
I mean, holy moly, that's a huge new intrusion.
It's not unimaginable, though,
Absolutely.
at this point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then in Sweden, their numbers are low because they didn't have an official shutdown, but they have these table-sized drones that go around and bark at people.
Right, right. Yeah.
So that's a whole new measure, right? And I think that the whole goal of this thanatoid, I see it as a more thanatoid hyperbole from the super society.
I love it when you say that.
Yeah, thanatoid hyperbole, I think, is one of their favorite nasty tricks that fools a lot of people. I mean, it's incredibly potent mind game, and it appeals and it activates all of the fight or flight and fear centers in the brain, and that releases stress, and then that further creates a sense of heightened desperation or learned helplessness. I mean, it's like it's such a phenomenal occult science that they've developed around fear tactics, and I think that is one of the state's biggest accomplishments.
Yeah, speaking of the drones barking at you in Spain and other places, the technologies are so far advanced, as we've talked about before. First of all, China's already rolled out think of the task in developing algorithms to analyze and compare the faces of billions of people, and keep a registry of that and try to even maintain accuracy. It is impressive that they would even be able to do that.
They don't do it. It's not them. They themselves have, at some levels of resolutions, maybe a participating role in facilitating all this, but it is very AI driven.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Recognition, yeah.
No, yeah, exactly.
If that's but Xavier, I wanted to reference a document that's already been authored that describes this shared ideology between the states we call China and United States, and it was authored during this Clinton era that you were talking about, and it is essentially China's declaration of war against the American people in the unrestricted warfare document. And I think that is very much what we're seeing. And in this declaration, it asserts that in a military conflict,